Algebra students, in this video today we will be studying the number line. Okay, it's pretty easy stuff. We're going to be studying the number line and opposite numbers and absolute values. Okay, so pretty simple stuff today. Let's go ahead and jump right into this. First of all, copy down your heading today. We're going to look at what your heading today is called real numbers, lesson 2.1, and be sure and include today's date. We're looking at real numbers, that's your heading. Please copy that down. The lesson number is 2.1, and be sure and include today's date. Alright, now, in algebra, our number system can pretty much be divided into two main parts: real numbers and imaginary numbers. Okay, now, if you're wondering what imaginary numbers are, I'll just quickly show you. They come from the fact that you cannot take the square root of a negative number. Now, what I'm saying right now, you do not need to take notes on. Just listen, okay? You cannot take the square root of a negative number, so we make it positive. We put an I right here, and the square root of 4 is 2. So the square root of negative 4 equals 2i. This is called an imaginary number. We're not going to worry about that now. We will get into that before the school year is over. But I'm just simply saying, our number system can be divided up into real numbers and imaginary numbers. Now, under real numbers, there's a lot of different numbers. There's whole numbers, integers, rational, real, irrational, rational, and stuff like that. But the main two parts are real numbers and imaginary numbers, and obviously today we're going to be talking about real numbers, okay? Now, we will not look at imaginary numbers until much later in the year. Today we're just looking at real numbers. A real number is any number. I would definitely copy this down. A real number is any number that exists on the standard number line. It doesn't matter if they're fractions, decimals, whole numbers, etc. Okay? That does not matter. So a real number is any number that exists on our standard number line. Positive, negative, it doesn't matter. Okay? The first thing we want to do today is look at how to compare numbers to see which one is larger or smaller. I know this sounds amazingly easy, and it is, but still pay close attention, because there could be sometimes where it's a little confusing when we get to the negative numbers, okay? So please pay attention. Before we do anything, though, I first want to look at a number line and talk about it. So in your notes, please draw a line like this and put an arrow on both ends. Now, if I go too fast, just pause the video, okay? Excuse me. In the middle, we'll go and put a 0. Then we'll put a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and of course this goes on and on. That's why there's an arrow right there. And then to the left, we have negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, and so on and so forth, okay? Now, 0, if you want to make note of this, 0 is the boundary between your positive and your negative numbers, okay? 0 is the boundary. So in other words, 0 is not positive. It is not negative. It is neither. It's the boundary between your positive and negative numbers. Obviously, to the right, we have our positive numbers, and to the left of 0, we have our imaginary numbers, okay? Some people call this 0 the origin, and that's fine. Later, when we get into graphing on the coordinate plane, we'll have two number lines that intersect, and we call that the origin, but that's for later. But anyway, this is your standard number line. Now notice, as you move to the right, the numbers get larger, okay? They get larger. And notice as you move to the left, the numbers get smaller. It's really important you understand that, okay? Alright, so we're going to be using the number line a lot today. Okay guys, sorry I had to pause the video. I'm not sure what I was saying, but I'm just simply saying we're going to move on now. We're going to use this number line a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. have that when we need it later on. Alright, okay, let's move on. Now, with all of that in mind, what I just said, let's take a look at a couple of problems, okay? Here we go. Please take really good notes on this. First of all, I want you to write two inequalities, not one, two, that compare the two given numbers, okay? So here's your first problem, alright? Copy that in your notes, please. I want you to write those two numbers as two inequalities. Now, this should be pretty easy to do. We know which number is bigger, and we know which number is smaller. Think about a number line. Here's 0, here's 5, here's 11. 11 is further to the right, so 11 is bigger. So I can write this, I can write 5 is smaller than 11. That's fine, or less than 11. Or I can write 11 is greater than 5. And I want both of those. The directions say to write two inequalities. That's it. You leave the numbers like they are, the 5 first and the 11, and write the correct inequality. Then swap the numbers around and write the correct inequality. It's really pretty simple. Let's do it again. Take these two numbers and write two inequalities. Now we know which number is bigger and which one's smaller. Negative 5, of course, is smaller than 4. Here's 0, here's negative 5, here's positive 4. 4 is further to the right, so 4 is larger than negative 5. So I can write negative 5 is less than 4. That's correct. And I can also write 4 is greater than negative 5. Okay? So there's my two inequalities. Now let's try one more of these, because this next one quite often confuses students. Now a lot of students see this, and this happens so many times. They see an 8 and think it's bigger than 3, so they say negative 8 is bigger than negative 3. And negative 3 is smaller than negative 8. In fact, some of you might have actually been thinking that if you were honest. Well, hold on. Just relax and think of a number line. Here's 0, here's negative 8, and here's negative 3, right? Negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Which one of these two numbers is further to the right? Negative 3. So which number is bigger? Negative 3, not negative 8. So I would say negative 3 is greater than negative 8. And I would also say negative 8 is less than negative 3. And there's your two inequalities. Okay? So if you have to, use the number line to make sure you know which number is further to the right and which number is further to the left. Okay, let's try another problem that's a little more difficult now, but not too bad. Let's take a look at this, okay? Okay, copy this in your notes. I want you to take these numbers and write them in ascending order. Now let's talk about ascending and descending, okay? To ascend means to go up. So when I tell you to write the numbers in ascending order, I want you to go up. Well, you can't go up unless you start with the smallest number and go up to the biggest number. Okay? Descending means to go down. Well, you can't go down unless you start with the biggest number and you work your way down to the smallest number. Okay? So, since it says ascending order, that means I'm going up. So I've got to start with the smallest and work my way up to the biggest, okay? So we're going to rewrite these numbers going from the smallest up to the largest. Now students, I know a lot of you are going to be able to do this in your head, and that's fine, but I'm still going to teach us very basically, okay? Now first of all, I would encourage you to put all these numbers on a number line just so you can see where they lie. And then think about it, students. Once you get all of these numbers on a number line, you can just write them from left to right, and you'll have them going from smallest to largest, okay? So, I'm going to go through and plot all these numbers. Negative 2 would go right here. Be sure and label each point. Positive 4 would go right here. 0 would go right here. 1.5, that's over 1.5. So put a point there and label it 1.5. Now 1/2, that's 0.5, right? So 1/2, I would put that right here. And then negative 3 over 2. Now think about that, guys. Negative 3 over 2. 3 over 2 means 2 goes into 3 ones with the remainder of 1. So we get 1 and 1/2, or 1.5. Okay? So negative 3 over 2 is negative 1.5. So negative 1.5 right here. So I'll put negative 3 over 2. And look at that, guys. How many numbers did I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many points do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to list these from smallest to largest. So negative 2 would come first. Negative 3/2 would come second. 0 would come next. 1/2 would come next. 1.5 would come next. And then 4. Now I know a lot of you are good with numbers and you can do this in your head, and that's fine. But using a number line really does help. Okay? It really does. It eliminates little mistakes. Alright, let's continue on. Now let's move on to doing something different. Let's back up. So what we've been doing here for the past 5-7 minutes is learning how to compare numbers, see which one's larger, which one's smaller. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to use a number line. Okay? Now let's move on to finding the opposite of a number. This is pretty easy to do. In fact, it's so easy to do. I don't have any problems typed out for you. I'm just going to handwrite one problem and then go on. And that actually should be one word right there. But anyways, moving on. Please take some notes on this, alright? Now watch carefully. If I said, what's the opposite of 5? You would put negative 5. Is that easy? If I said, what's the opposite of negative 1.6? You would put positive 1.6. Okay? So in other words, when I tell you to find the opposite of a number, it just simply means to change the sign. It's that easy. Okay? That's all that it means, is change the sign. So the opposite of 5 is negative 5. The opposite of negative 5 is 5. The opposite of negative 1.6 is 1.6. The opposite of 1.6 is negative 1.6. That's simple. That's easy. We're going to move on. Now let's take a look at absolute values, okay? First, here is the technical definition of what absolute value is. Please copy this in your notes. The absolute value of a number is the distance the number is from 0. Alright? That's the technical definition. Please copy that down in your notes. Now if I said to you, what's the absolute value of 3? How far is 3 from 0? Well, it's 3. So the absolute value of 3 is 3. If I said, what's the absolute value of negative 3? Well, remember, distance is never negative. You don't say, well, actually, distance can be negative when you get into velocity and different problems like that. But for now, I mean, distance is not negative, so we would not say the distance that negative 3 is from 0 is negative 3. That's not true. Negative 3 is how far from 0? 1, 2, 3. So the distance negative 3 is from 0 is 3. So the absolute value of 3 is 3. The absolute value of negative 3 is 3. So that's where we get absolute value from. Now, if you didn't understand everything that I just said, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I'm going to make this really simple for you, okay? Really simple. I should have typed this. I didn't, so write this down. When I ask you to find the absolute value of a number positive or leave it positive. That's it. So if you did not understand exactly what I said a second ago with the number line, that's fine. Some of you did, some of you did not, but all of us can do this. When I tell you to find the absolute value of a number, you take that number and you make it positive. Or if it's already positive, then leave it positive. That's it. That's simple. Let me say it again. When I tell you to find the absolute value of a number, you either make it positive if it's not positive, or you leave it positive if it's positive. That's simple, guys. I mean, it is that simple. So let's do some problems. Please copy these down. These bars right here mean absolute value. So copy that in your notes. If I said find the absolute value of -5, remember you make the number positive or you leave it positive. Well, it's negative, so we're going to make it positive. There, we're finished. That easy. So the absolute value of -5 is 5. It's that easy. Now, here's where a lot of students mess up. They think the absolute value of 5 is -5, and they're getting confused. They're thinking of the opposite of a number. When I tell you to find the opposite of a number, you always change the sign. Always, period. But the absolute value of a number is make it positive, like I did here. It was negative, and I made it positive. Or leave it positive. It was already positive, so I just simply leave it positive. So the absolute value of -5 is 5, make it positive. And the absolute value of 5 is 5. So Mr. Arrow, you're saying that when we take the absolute value of a number, we will always get a positive number. That is correct. Always. Okay? Now let's take it a little further. What if I said find the absolute value of 6 minus 4? Now here's what a lot of students do, and this is wrong. They make the 6 positive, they make the 4 positive, and they get 10 for an answer. Now that's not correct. Let me say that again. That is not correct. You first simplify this down to one number and then find the absolute value of it. So the absolute value of 6 minus 4 is the absolute value of 2, because 6 minus 4 is 2. So you must first simplify the inside of the absolute value. Now, what's the absolute value of 2? 2. So there's your answer. Okay? And that's it, guys. I mean, you're going to have some questions in your homework tonight, and that's great. That's what the help video is for. In your homework, I've actually thrown some problems at you that are going to be a little confusing that I didn't quite cover in the notes, and that's okay. That's what the help video is for. So use it, work hard, and make sure you understand the math. Okay, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call or email.